Hi everyone. I thought it could be fun to document a drawing completely from start to finish. I realized it's been a while since I did a celestial drawing, so I wanted to do something astronomy related, which is actually what I studied in college, planets mostly, but definitely a decent chunk of astronomy. The quality of photos we're able to get of outer space now is incredible, so why not take advantage? The reference I think I've settled on is this one of the Pillars of Creation, which the original was taken by the Hubble telescope in the 90s. I think that this is a much newer one. I want to say maybe 2014, but it's absolutely incredible. So as usual, I don't work with color, so I'm going to be putting a black and white filter over it. So it'll look like that. I still really like the look of it. Now I can see the values of it. And this one I'm actually going to be doing a little bit in reverse. Instead of black ink on a white paper, I'm going to be doing white ink on black paper. So I have a white Jelly Roll pen, which I don't have a ton of experience working with, so that'll be really interesting. And then instead of my usual Bristol board, I have this black Strathmore artagain paper. It's really nice quality black paper. I've actually cut it down a little bit to size so that it's a little bit more manageable, just because I'm not really sure how doing dot work with the Jelly Roll is going to go. But yeah, I think those are the materials we're working with, so let's go ahead and get started. Alright everybody, welcome to Time-Lapse Time. As always, I've got my black and white reference photo up and I'm using a 6B pencil to get a light sketch down. Using the Jelly Roll feels really weird. I've only used it a little bit before. If you're familiar at all with my Instagram page, my highlights have little icons that I drew with this pen, and under the art and color one, I have a drawing of Andromeda that I used the Jelly Roll for, but I've never used it directly for dot work. It's a lot different than using a micron pen. The point is bigger. For one, this pen is a size 0.8, and I really rarely go that large with the microns. I'm not sure if they make Jelly Roll pens in a smaller size, but if they do, I'll be looking into it. The ink also feels a lot thicker. You may notice throughout the video that I'm occasionally wiping the pen on the back of my hand because the ink kind of builds up on the tip and stops the newing from coming out very well. Because it's such a large tip, I'm also having to be a lot more careful about where I'm placing my dots than I usually am. Even just a few dots in an area changes the value a lot. I'm still not sure how I feel about how it's coming along, but I'm hoping that as I keep drawing, it'll come together and I'll be happy with the end product. As I mentioned before, celestial drawings feel special to me because I studied outer space when I was in college. My field of study was planetary science, so all about planets, their geology, atmospheres, interiors, orbits, everything. My most involved research projects were analyzing remote sensing data, essentially doing research using images of planets that we've captured via satellite. I was employed for a semester when I was in college to map out terrain on a very specific site on Mars. There's an absolutely incredible, very free program that anyone can download called JMARS. I'll put the link for it in the description. That has different maps of several of the planets, not just Mars. They have satellite images, temperature data, topography data, so much information. I highly encourage anyone interested in space to check it out. Even if you're not planning on doing any research, it's really cool to look at. But anyway, that's the program I used to do my Mars research. And then for a course I took on remote sensing, I did research on the atmosphere of Venus. The European Space Agency sent a mission to Venus in 2005 called the Venus Express, and the images from that mission are hosted on their planetary science archive. I'm kind of rambling a little bit now, but I love the planets. I could talk about them for literal hours. I also had minors in physics and astronomy when I was in college, but those were not as fun, too much math. You may be wondering, does my full-time job relate to my degree? And the answer is absolutely not, but I guess that's the way it goes sometimes. I originally wanted to be a research scientist, go work for NASA or whoever, the whole deal. But during college, right before I got hired as an assistant to look at the surface of Mars, I had found a different job. I had been working at a children's science museum near campus, and during the semester that I was doing research, I was working both jobs and still taking all my classes, and it was really hard to balance. I ultimately decided that I needed to let one of the jobs go, and I chose to stay at the museum. It had been such a coincidence of a job, but I loved working there so much that it changed my career path. I was still so passionate about space stuff, I knew I wanted to finish my degree in that, but I realized that I love working with kids and that I wanted to work in museums. So that's what I've been working towards. When COVID hit in March of 2020, I was a senior in college. I had left for spring break and I never came back. My partner was going to college in a different city, so I packed up a duffel and went to stay with him. Both of our senior years finished out online and we graduated. Then in the summer, we moved out here to Seattle. I went back to my college campus once, right after I graduated, to get the rest of the stuff that had just been sitting in my apartment. The apartment that I lived in my senior year of college was really something else. For one, it wasn't actually an apartment. It was this old, decrepit house on the edge of campus that had 3 levels, and each level was like its own unit. There were some guys living in the basement, I think 3 people on the ground floor, and I lived in the top floor all by myself. I had my own door and a staircase that led directly up to my floor, so I didn't pass through the rest of the house ever. Saying I had a whole floor to myself sounds like it was a big unit. It was not. The bedroom was a pretty decent size, but everything else was so tiny. And the place was kind of falling apart. The shower was like 5 feet tall. The whole bathroom floor was tilted, so when you sat on the toilet, you'd be leaning to the side. I once had a bat get into the apartment. I didn't even find out about this until after I moved out, but the guys in the basement were dealing cocaine. It was all really crazy, but I wanted to live close enough to campus that I could still walk to class, and it was kind of all that I could afford. I tried my best to make it home though, and I really loved living by myself. The building next door had a tea shop on the 2nd floor, so sometimes in the mornings I would make myself a cup of coffee and look through my kitchen window at the tea shop opening up and the people that would start to filter in. Across the street from my apartment, there was a little diner that had the best breakfast I've ever had. It didn't have any tables, just one long countertop that snaked all the way through the building. My partner and I used to eat there every time he'd come to visit, and we still think about that place all the time. We're going back to our hometown in September, and we may have to make the drive out just to eat there one more time. When I was in college, I was the most stressed and anxious that I've ever been, but there are a lot of aspects of it that I loved and a lot of things that I miss. Even my crappy apartment was at least a little bit charming, and for every class that made me want to tear my hair out, there was one that inspired me and made me excited to learn. I had a lot of really, really cool professors, and I was able to take a lot of really interesting classes. I don't regret going at all, just don't talk to me about student loans. I'm really happy to be living in Seattle now though. When I was in college, I had a lot of dreams about my partner and I being able to move to a big city after we graduated, and I honestly thought that it would be a lot more difficult than it was, but we got really, really lucky. My partner has a really stable job that allows him to work remotely from anywhere, and I had a temp job lined up, so we moved, and that was that. It's gorgeous here, the hiking has been incredible, and I've met a lot of really great people. But anyways, I think I've rambled enough for this time lapse, so let's get on to the finished drawing. I definitely had some doubts about how it was going to turn out, and I feel like it looks a lot different from most of my work, but I do think it looks cool in its own sort of way. It was really fun to try out something a little bit different. I hope you enjoyed watching the process, and thanks for joining me.